burada kütüphanelerin geleceğine yön veren önemli isimlerden birini ağırlıyoruz. Uluslararası Kütüphane Dernekleri ve Kurumları Federasyonu IFLA Genel Sekreteri Sayın Sharon Memis, kütüphanelerin uluslararası ölçekteki dönüşümünü, işbirliği imkanlarını ve ortak mesleki vizyonu bizlerle paylaşacak. Değerli konuşmalarını gerçekleştirmek üzere Sayın Sharon Memis'i sahneye davet ediyorum. Çeviri kulaklıklarına ihtiyaç duyan misafirlerimiz el kaldırarak kendilerini belirtirlerse ekip arkadaşlarımız kulaklıkları dağıtacaklar.
Aha. Here's my slide. Excellent. Good morning, distinguished guests, Deputy Minister, friends, colleagues, anyone working in the library field, welcome. And I really just first want to thank you very much for the invitation. It really is an honor to be here in this absolutely fabulous library. I have to be completely neutral, of course, in any prize giving, but good luck. So it really is wonderful. It's also wonderful to hear from you, Deputy Minister, that Turkey is really investing in libraries. It is regrettably increasingly rare that this is happening. And I know that in my own country, in the UK, much as ministers and everybody say how much we love libraries, they still cut the budgets. So understanding the value and the impact of libraries, I commend you, and I think it is absolutely wonderful. So, I hope. Yes, it works. So you've chosen the theme, the healing library. And I really love that framing because it takes us beyond libraries as simply service points and into libraries as really, and rather as you were saying, I think, Deputy Minister, deeply human places. Places of care, inclusion, dialogue, and belonging. Places of safety, as you also said, built and protected by one of the most trusted professions. Librarians, along with doctors and pilots, are always amongst the three most trusted professions. So all of the librarians in here, take a bow. What you have is gold dust. I was asked to speak about IFLA, and because I was told that many of you may not be really aware of the breadth of the work, although I know that there are very many IFLA fans and volunteers here. So what I want to do is do a little bit of IFLA propaganda today, if you will forgive me. And I also want to tell you about how impressive IFLA is. Not because I and my team are impressive, although my team is impressive, but because of you and because of the many volunteers who make this organization so extraordinary. And IFLA exists to really serve and amplify the work that you and your colleagues do every day across the world, often under the radar and sometimes in difficult contexts. And in these uncertain times, I think that matters more than ever. Libraries remain trusted adaptable anchors for their communities. IFLA is the global voice of libraries and sometimes the global conscience. Better libraries lead to better lives and a better world. So well done, congratulations on your investment and valuing that. So, like many people who've ever done any kind of management training, I always think of the power of three, the three things that I think, what do I want the audience to go away with? And for me, what encapsulates IFLA is this idea of belong, be heard, and shape the future. And these ideas will run as opportunities for you through everything that I share today. So first, I'll talk about IFLA, and I'll encourage you to engage, get involved with this extraordinary global federation, a place to learn, connect, and build lasting professional relationships across the world, but also deep friendships and sometimes marriages. We have very many who've met at conferences. And second, I want to show you how IFLA is making the case for investing and supporting libraries on the global stage, positioning libraries as one of our most powerful assets for building a better future for everyone. And third, I want to encourage you to embed futures thinking into your planning, using the tools and ideas coming out of the Trend Report and our wider work on trends and futures as IFLA approaches our centenary year in 2027. Because we want libraries to become the drivers of change and not just the passengers. So let us begin with IFLA. So what is IFLA? 1,700 members, ranging from the Library of Congress in Washington to the Library Association of Samoa. Everyone has a voice. Every kind of library in 150 countries. We have 78 committees. If you are a librarian, I promise you will find a subject where there is a committee. It may meet at 6 o'clock in the morning or it may meet at midnight, but it exists. And I think that the chair of the Regional Council, Ertril Chimen, who is here, who's also a member of our governing board, we have been on many a call at 10 o'clock at night. But the enthusiasm that our volunteers still come and bring to those conversations is wonderful. We have 1,100 volunteers, and we have 99 years of history. IFLA, as I say, is celebrating 100 years in 2027, when our centenary congress will be in London, which is not so far away, so I hope that you will make it there. So what is IFLA? Well, it's a meeting place, a place for the global library field to meet and share about common issues it faces, providing support, finding solutions. It's an incubator and catalyst. It generates fresh ideas and innovation, develops new tools, develops the gold standards of the field. And it is the global voice of library, a voice for libraries on the international stage, a driver of partnerships and a support for advocacy at all levels. And it's an amplifier of good ideas. Those good ideas go viral. Librarians are really good at that. And it's a channel for solidarity. Librarians are incredible at supporting each other. It is probably the most generous profession I have ever had the privilege to work with. And that is, again, something quite extraordinary to hang on to. So what do we do? Well, we shape international policy discussion at the UN, at WIPO, at UNESCO, at the COP, and I know COP31 will be in Turkey this year, at the EU, along with, obviously, our friends at IFLA, with whom we work very closely, and there is no rivalry at all. We work very well together. We create opportunities for members globally, and we enable vibrant global professional communities. We set those global standards. We drive capacity building, skills development, and we have huge resources. If there is anything that you want to know about librarianship, I promise you will find it in our repository and on our website. And we inspire and inform decision-making in libraries globally. Our collective voice makes a difference. So I'm going to give you a brief organogram. Don't focus on it too much. Ignore the acronyms. I had to learn so many when I joined IFLA. But this is really just to show you how we are structured. It's a little technical, but it also gives a sense of the scope of the Federation. The governing board providing that strategic leadership, IFLA headquarters supporting the whole system. And we do that with 19 people, which is, I always find, quite incredible. Many of you will already know IFLA's professional structure, so I'm going to be brief here. But essentially, the Professional Council brings together the chairs of the professional committees, and that chair sits on IFLA's governing board, ensuring that all of the professional expertise really feeds directly into that leadership and strategy. And that is how every element and every single professional unit, 55 or so of them, are feeding into the leadership. And then we have our sections and special interest groups, and they tend to cover very specific library types, services and themes, and they really are the hubs for learning, standards, events and professional development. And as I say, whatever your interest, whether it's cataloguing, AI, parliamentary, public libraries, there is almost certainly an IFLA group working on it. The Regional Council, which is a relatively new structure, chaired, of course, by Ertuğrul, really it's based on the UN regions. So we have the 6 global regions: Europe, which includes Turkey, North America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East and North Africa, Asia, Oceania. And they really help sure that we are not being too Euro or North American centric, and that we're getting all of the voices from across the world. And I think it's been one of the great successes is how we have volunteers from every country, ranging from Iran to Saudi Arabia to the Pacific Islands to the Caribbean, just about everywhere. And I think huge credit to the Regional Council and Ertuğrul's leadership there. And the chair of the Regional Council, as I say, also sits on the governing board so that regional perspectives feed directly into strategic leadership. And perhaps where our regional divisions really excel is their focus on advocacy, engagement and capacity building in each region, making sure that what we're offering and doing is relevant. And we also have the advisory committees, and these focus on key cross-cutting issues for the profession. And they cover areas such as copyright, cultural heritage, ethics, freedom of access to information, open science scholarship, and standards. And they play a crucial role in the coordination and coherence across IFLA's work. And they reflect and provide quite a nice segue into advocacy, which I'm going to talk about next. But the key point here is there are so many opportunities for every single person in this room to engage and benefit. And I'm hoping that after this presentation, our website crashes because so many of you are going to look at it. So as I say, I'm going to talk a little bit more about advocacy, because whilst many of you will be familiar with the professional side, perhaps less so with our policy and advocacy work. And I don't think it's separate from the professional practice. It's completely intertwined. Sometimes people see it as something separate that, well, we're not quite sure what that matters. You know, does that matter? I'm a librarian in Botswana. How does that impact me? I hope to persuade you all that advocacy is absolutely at the core and has that impact on you. it's not separate then. And this is how really the expertise, evidence, and values of the profession are carried into global and national decision making. So we're not just shouting about libraries, but we're backing it up with evidence, with expertise. We involve our volunteers. We don't just go to the UN as IFLA headquarters, we bring in our experts and volunteers too. And that is a really important point, because it's really where the work of librarians is translated into influence, and where IFLA helps ensure libraries are part of the conversations that shape our future. So we work across 8 broad policy areas. I'm not going to go into massive detail because I don't have time, but I would really encourage you to explore further. And I know many of them will resonate, because our work focuses on making the rules work for libraries. Whether it's copyright law, and we're constantly lobbying. No, I don't use the word lobbying. We're constantly trying to influence and persuade, is a much better way of saying it. Copyright, open scholarship, cultural and heritage, and information integrity, which again, you referred to before. And across all of these, the aim is the same: to ensure libraries can provide access to knowledge, protect culture, support openness, and remain trusted spaces for participation and resilience in their communities. These other areas, digital inclusion, internet governance, climate action, and sustainable development, have the same aim: making sure libraries can access participation and resilience. I'm going to focus just a little on climate action, because there are some real opportunities. Given that Turkey is actually hosting COP31, we are always very active at the COP meeting, and we are doing quite a lot of exciting work, which we will be sharing soon, around climate action. So please do stay in touch, follow what we're doing, and please engage so that we can ensure that we're having a strong collective voice. We'll obviously be working with Ertuğrul and colleagues there. But the one I'd like to focus on a little bit more are the Sustainable Development Goals. And the reason I want to do this, I won't go through them in massive detail. You will all be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which every government has signed up for, which are there to build a sustainable future for the whole world. And they are relevant in the most developed countries as they are in the least developed countries. And it is some of the more developed countries that actually are quite off track with some of these. But why we like the Sustainable Development Goals: not only do they resonate with our values, with our beliefs, information features very strongly there, but they are an incredibly powerful framework. They are very useful for advocacy, because they give us a shared language that policymakers, funders, and partners understand. For libraries, the SDGs are not really abstract. They're a very practical tool for articulating impact, building partnerships, and showing how access to information, skills, and culture underpins progress across every policy area. IFLA has official observer status at the UN, and that is therefore our role to bring library perspectives into that global discussion. And we support members to make sure libraries are visible in national SDG processes. And I think, in line actually with the theme of this festival, the SDGs are perhaps the ultimate healing framework, because they seek to build more equitable, inclusive, and resilient societies. And that's what libraries do every day in their communities. There we are. So Advocacy is effective, and when it's successful, and it often is, it can have huge impact on government policies and funding priorities. And this is why we at IFLA are looking beyond 2030. And we are one of the founders of the Culture 2030 Goal campaign. We are pushing for a standalone culture goal in the next Global Development Agenda, and one that explicitly includes libraries. Why is this important? Well, if libraries are named in that post-2030 framework, it has real consequences. Greater visibility, stronger legitimacy, clearer policy signals, and better alignment with funding and national priorities. And for us, Mondiacult was an important opportunity to make that case. Mondiacult is UNESCO's global conference of culture ministers, where governments come together to shape how culture is understood and reflected in international policy. And again, because IFLA is an official UNESCO partner, I had the opportunity to speak directly to ministers, and I was talking about cultural rights and made the case that libraries sit at that intersection of knowledge, culture, and community, and yet are still too often an afterthought in cultural policy. So my message was very clear. Libraries should not sit on the margins of cultural policy. They must be recognized as essential partners and stakeholders in delivering culture, well-being, and sustainable development. Libraries absolutely belong in the center of cultural policy and not at the edges. And this was a fantastic opportunity to make that case. And that's why we work with our members who also work with their partners in government. And this is some of the work which may be much less visible when you are on a 6 o'clock call talking about public libraries, let's say. So this is a phrase I often use because libraries represent a pre-existing, versatile, recognized, inclusive infrastructure for delivering development at all levels, alone or in partnership with others. Why wouldn't you want to put libraries at the center of your policy? We're there. And our advocacy matters because if we only talk to ourselves, we have a tendency to just tell each other how wonderful we all are. But what we have to do, and that's how we use the SDG framework and that language, is how we explain that impact and what we do to others who are not librarians, who may be ministers, who last went to a library when they were 6 years old and still think of it as a big room with books. Libraries are so different now, and you are very fortunate to have a minister who recognizes that. But I go to a lot of meetings with people who are not librarians, but who make decisions, who are often deciding budgets and funding around libraries. And what my success measure is if at the end of that meeting they turn around to me and say, wow, I'd never thought about libraries like that before. And it happens. I recently had a meeting in Google where that happened as well, and certainly at the European Commission and with other funders. So it is a really important part of our work. Because libraries support, as we all say, literacy, lifelong learning, we build inclusion and social cohesion, we contribute to well-being, we hold communities together, often where no one else is left. And we have something priceless that I talked about before, and that is trust, that fact that we are so trusted in the community. So getting that language, getting that framework, supporting us with the advocacy, and where we can help you with advocacy is a critical and important role of IFLA. Because look at the other side. Imagine our communities without libraries. And that's why we must never be taken for granted, and why advocacy matters, and why IFLA puts it at the heart of its work. Librarians are far too important to be taken for granted. So when we talk about the post-2030 agenda, we're really talking about the future we want. But that future is already being shaped by trends transforming libraries today. Who has access to knowledge, how trust is built, how technology reshapes learning, and how communities hold together. And that's why futures thinking isn't abstract for libraries. It's really practical, it's political, it's essential. And at IFLA, this sits at the heart of our strategy. Sustainable futures for all through knowledge and information. And we use trends and futures thinking to help libraries anticipate change, build resilience, and act with confidence, and not simply to react once the future has hit us in the face. And that's exactly what we try to do with a trend report, to help the profession understand what's changing, what's at stake, and how libraries can shape the future rather than just wait to be shaped by it. For us, sustainability means making the future part of our reflections today. So what are we doing? The Trend Report is one of our key tools for futures thinking. It's a big report, about 150 pages. It's absolutely brilliant and has been read by many people outside of the library profession. It's rigorous, prepared by academics, fantastic data, and I highly recommend you reading it. It's been translated into several languages as well. But it really helps libraries understand what's already changing, why it matters, and how to face the future with confidence and not fear. What exactly is it? Well, it's a conversation starter. It's not really there as a predictive tool. It's evidence-based, and it's really only one half of the question, because in a sense, the other half is you. It's a tool. You need to use it. How relevant is it for you? But it is very much a starting point. And I'll quickly go through the 7 trends. They won't be of any great surprise. These are the big trends. And I think it's just worth noting, knowledge practices are changing, which means we need to really watch that equitable access. AI, nobody needs to be told that that's a major trend. But again, the ethical framework under which libraries operate provides a really sound anchor for ensuring it is responsible AI in libraries. Trust is being renegotiated. There's a massive loss of trust in politicians, in the media, in institutions with fake news. Again, libraries have a really important role in helping rebuild trust in institutions. Skills and abilities are becoming more complex. And again, the many dangers of all of these trends is that the elite will move ahead. And again, the libraries have a huge role in ensuring it's an inclusive progress. Digital technologies are unevenly distributed. In many ways, the digital divide is being exacerbated by what is happening. So again, librarians and libraries have a huge role in combating that. Information systems are using more resources linked to climate. I was horrified when I realized how much energy was being used every time I put a question into ChatGPT and looking at those huge data centers. It is something we've really got to think about. And I think the final one, which again, I think where libraries have such a role, is people are seeking community connections, because so much of, say, local media, everything is online, and the libraries remain that community hub. So this huge role that I think librarians can really respond to. But do read the report, because there's some really interesting material in there. But I'd say the key lessons are, to state the blindingly obvious, uncertainty is a fact of life, and it's about the only thing that is certain. But we do have agency. We're not powerless, and we can influence what comes next. Again, it's not about predicting the future. It's about facing it with confidence and shaping it. And what we're now doing at IFLA is taking that to the next stage with our Trends and Futures project, which we're launching this month in Toronto, which will be weaved through our work in the next 18 months, including in Busan at our Congress, and then culminating in our Centenary Conference in London. We're working with some of the world's top futurists, and it's quite an exciting project, and I can see Airtrol nodding. Please do watch out for that, because I think that will be a really interesting one. If we can help embed futures thinking into library planning, I would feel extraordinarily proud and happy. So that, I keep mentioning IFLA 100, which brings me to the celebration of IFLA 100, because we are celebrating our 100th anniversary next year on the 30th of September, but we're going to be launching the centenary events in Busan this year. And I think what's important, the way we're trying to do this, is not just to celebrate the achievements of the past, which are remarkable, but we want to really shift and pivot to the future. What does IFLA's next century of librarianship mean? What is the future of international librarianship? And we would love to get as many of you as possible involved in that thinking. There are also some quite fun things that are happening. I think we've got a logo competition, a science fiction writing competition, a photo competition, all sorts of things. But what we really want to do is to start to look towards the future. I won't go into this, but if you're interested in history, my colleague in The Hague has been digitizing many of our archives, which are absolutely fascinating. And he and I have conversations as he discovers something new each day. But we were founded in, as you can see, in 1927. You can see that we were initially in UNESCO, that we moved to The Hague in the 70s, that at one point, in fact, we were going to be part of UNESCO, and then we decided to stay separate, which I think was probably a good idea because we'd have got lost in the bureaucracy of UNESCO. So to give you a little bit of history then, about Turkey's connection with IFLA. So the Turkish Library Association was founded in, I think, 1949 and actually became a member in 1950, the year after it was formed. And there is a letter from IFLA's Secretary General, and you can see the association's entry in our annual review. And from the 1950s onwards, delegations and representatives from Turkey regularly attended and presented papers at IFLA Council meetings and congresses. Turkish institutional membership started in the 1950s, first with the National Library, then with various institutions throughout the following decades. And by the 1990s, we had more than a dozen members in Turkey. And this may inspire you for the future. You hosted a congress in 1995 with a rather prescient title of Libraries of the Future. And it attracted over 2,600 delegates from 104 countries, which was a record for country participation at the time. Whilst I don't have a complete list of the Istanbul Organizing Committee, 3 individuals were clearly central, and you may know some of them. Altanay Sernikli, who received the IFLA medal on behalf of the committee at the conference. Hilmi Çelik, a parliamentary librarian who headed the program committee. And Meral Alakus, who served as executive secretary. What was particularly significant at that conference was that a major theme was freedom of expression. And that was actually the moment when FAIF, which was actually at that time called CAIF, Committee on Freedom of Access to Information and Freedom of Expression, was established as a result of the Congress. And this has continued to shape IFLA's work today. On a lighter footnote, one of my predecessors, the then Secretary General Leo Vogt, met his future wife at the Istanbul Congress and lived for many years and is still alive, and proof that IFLA conferences can change lives in more ways than one. So, how do you get involved? Well, start by speaking with IFLA volunteers and members here today. There are many of them, and you can also speak with me. But also visit our website, look at the repository, huge amount of information there. If you're not a member, consider it. This is the propaganda bit. But membership, I think, is more than just benefits. It really is, in my view, about belonging, and that is what most people say to us. That's why they value it. These are some of the tangible and intangible benefits, reductions in Congress fee, etc., which are great, but it really is that sense that you are part of a global community, the IFLA family, and that is why so many people join. And once they get bitten by the IFLA bug, they stay. Specifically about volunteering, volunteering is a unique personal and professional opportunity. It allows you to build networks with colleagues from around the world, contribute to strengthening the global library field, and share and celebrate the work and experience of your own association. You bring back ideas, insights, lessons that you can apply in your own libraries and networks, and quite simply, it helps you make a difference. And so please do talk to the volunteers who are here. But really, at the heart of it all are people-to-people connections. And that's what turns a global network into a global community. And WILIC, the World Library and Information Congress, really sits at the heart of those people-to-people connections. It is the most international moment in our calendar where the global library field comes together to share ideas, do business, build relationships, and recharge. And beyond WILIC, there are many other in-person meetings around the world similar to today. Smaller gatherings that offer a real taste of international librarianship and a great way to get involved. And alongside in-person meetings, there's a steady program of webinars and online meetings offering regular opportunities to learn, connect, and engage with IFLA's work from anywhere in the world. And of course, I hope that many of you will join us in Busan in August for our 2026 World Library and Information Congress. It really is that wonderful moment where the global community gets together. And the theme this year is Libraries Powering Transformation. And there's still time to apply to be a conference volunteer, which comes with free registration, but be quick as the closing date is the 17th of April. And as ever, IFLA members, of course, benefit from a reduced registration fee. So, really, to close, I want to come back to where we began. Belong, be heard, shape the future. Those three opportunities have run through everything I have shared today, and they sit at the heart of IFLA's work. The challenge is now with you. Thank you.